This broadcast is the property of Codependents Anonymous. Reproduction without written permission from Codependents Anonymous is not permitted.
Today's topic is boundaries and jealousy, and to introduce the topic is James K. Welcome, James.
Thank you, David. I just found out I was presenting the topic, and I did spend some time on it. In fact, I've spent a good portion of my life on it. My life has been affected by my partner's jealousy and my lack of boundaries. What I've come to realize is that my wife's jealousy comes from her childhood and that her mother never trusted her father, and she models that behavior. I believe she's hardwired to be insecure. I know my wife suffers from it, and I've learned through my CoDA program to have empathy for her struggles, that it is not my fault, and I cannot fix it. I have to accept it and tell her it is not my problem, it is her problem. I know boundaries could have helped me, but I never had any boundaries. I was working on my program for several years when I finally woke up and realized, because I was starting to love myself, that I needed protection from and then the boundaries made sense because I finally had something to protect, and I have boundaries now. There was something else that I had that I thought I could share. What I lived with all those years, I realize now, was my wife's unavailability. And this is just my point of view. She was always very jealous of other women. She was even jealous of her own daughter. I remember coming home from work and my wife would be all upset. I would always ask her, "Did you talk to your mother today?" And she would always say yes. And this is the pattern, and it continued on to her daughter. And then there was a pattern. And this part that I'm reading, it was written for patterns and characteristics. But when we're trapped in this cycle of jealousy and no boundaries, and you cycle down and down and down, and the only way that I could break the cycle was to take a pause in my marriage. And I lived by myself for a few years. And when I finally got my life all sorted out, then I could come home, and the jealousy didn't affect me as much as it used to, because I always thought it was my fault and it was my job to fix it. But it's not my fault, and it's not my job to fix it. That's my take on jealousy and boundaries. I love boundaries now, but it took me almost 4 years to find my boundaries, because I had no self. I had no sense of self, and I didn't know to protect myself. But now that I've learned through the CoDA program to protect myself, because I love myself, and there's something there to protect, and I'm becoming more and more myself every day, and I'm loving myself, and my whole world looks a lot different now because I have boundaries, and I can deal with the jealousy because it's not my affliction, it's my wife's, or if either way around. People, they're just hardwired that way. As they grow up, they don't trust people. They're taught not to trust, and they model that jealousy from generation to generation. At least that's how it was in my life, and I never had a problem with jealousy. So that's about all I have today, David, on presenting the topic. Thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you for sharing, James. I'll just add that yes, I do see a note. I see a note from someone in the room asking everyone to please mute unless you are speaking. A reminder, and thank you. So Boundaries for me, my interaction with boundaries before I got to the fellowship were I would set rigid obstructions, not boundaries. I would just close off everything and not interact. If I was uncomfortable with something, I was into avoidance, and I can't think of the word. There's a word for it. Now in this program, I learned to set boundaries that are allow me to change boundaries. I can change as my understanding of myself and the situations around me change, and it feels a lot healthier. So there is a brochure, there is a flyer on boundaries, and I'll share that on the screen and put a link in the chat. But also today's topic is about jealousy. And I know people don't believe me when I say I do not have a jealous bone in my body, but it's true, I don't. But I understand that many people do. I don't know why I don't, I just don't. It's not something that I get involved in. But I can learn about it from listening to other people. So with that, I'll open the meeting to questions and shares. If you would like to share on today's topic, please raise your hand and I will welcome you. Any questions, comments, or shares on today's topic, jealousy and boundaries?
Hi, my name is Connie and I'm a codependent.
Hi, Connie. I believe that Stephanie had her hand up first. Connie will be next. Welcome, Stephanie.
Hi, thank you. I'm Stephanie from Los Angeles, and I am very interested in this topic to do with jealousy. I'm the second to the oldest of 14 children, 10 of them girls, and my parents had narcissistic personality disorder and other, like my father was a dry alcoholic and my mother had delusions of grandeur. I don't know if that's part of the NPD, but and she was bipolar. So she triangulated her girls, and eventually she taught us, or my parents taught us, that we were a perfect family. In fact, the way they gossiped about everybody else, I thought our family was the only one that was going to go to heaven. But then I'd look at faults in our family. And I mean, I did this from a very early age 9, 10, 11. And I was confused, but the family lived in denial, total denial, and in a dream world, very typical of people with that are on the high on the spectrum of narcissistic personality disorder. And from doing some research, I learned that narcissists often marry other narcissists because they understand each other. But my mother was definitely, I realize now, jealous of me and in competition with me. However, she and my father was in collusion with her. He, I guess, either learned never to counter her or agreed with her, being a narcissist. She taught us that we were so perfect. We were incapable of any emotions like envy, jealousy, anger, revenge. But now, I finally broke from that family many years ago. And the more I learn, the more I realize they were just living in total denial, and that they projected like narcissists. I'm not talking about the typical call everybody a narcissist. It's the ones that really, the NPDs, the one with that disease, they can't take criticism. They do believe they're perfect. It's their defense mechanism. They project all their faults onto other people. And I realize now everything that they projected onto others, all the gossiping and fault finding, was really it was their faults as much as anybody's. And I'm finding it's a lifelong process to understand how to deal with the jealousy, because I was raised with this type of parenting and taught that we were perfect. I didn't even recognize my own feelings. My feelings were frozen for years. And I'm only beginning to realize and to be able to accept, as much as I'd like to hang on to that old family story that we were perfect and incapable of jealousy and envy and you name it, I have to face my parents weren't perfect. Our family wasn't perfect. In fact, we had so many faults. I'll be spending a lifetime trying to understand everything and overcome it all. I mean, I don't plan, I don't expect I'll be able to overcome it all, but I don't know how much time I have to share. And I don't know if you really want any specifics of the envy and jealousy that went on in my family or between me. I mean, toward my mother, toward me, or even possibly my father. It was hard to define whether the feelings were envy and jealousy or the fact that they were reading my personal diary where I spilled my guts. And because my parents taught me they were saints, I have since found they're as close to Satans in many ways as anyone could be. I mean, they had their good sides and their bad sides like everybody. But I don't know if what I felt was coming from them by the time I was a teenager, age 14 and 15, 16. I don't know if it was from resentment, because I actually wrote in my diary that I thought my parents were jealous of me. I was 15 then. And I didn't dream
Stephanie,
that. Pardon?
Stephanie, can you wrap it up in a few sentences, please?
I'm sorry, I can't hear you. What?
Can you wrap it up in a few sentences, please?
Oh, sure. Okay, I'm through.
All right. Well, thank you for sharing, Stephanie. And Cece, you are welcome.
Thank you so much. My name is Connie, and I am a codependent. Jealousy was something that I grew up in that environment wherein both my parents were jealous of anybody, anybody's attention towards each other. And, I remember my mom would, I grew up in the Philippines, and my mom would, take us in the car and then just kind of park by the club that my dad and his friends hung out in. Checking to see who was going to come out of the door. So it was something that was unfortunately normalized in the environment that I grew up in. Of course, I'm learning now, and I've had my own relationships, and I was very jealous. If the attention wasn't towards me, then I thought there must be something wrong with me, or I might be doing something wrong, or what's the matter? When really there isn't anything wrong. It's normal for people to share attention, right? And to be able to give compliments to other people without the without intention of malice or anything like that, or loving them more than I was being loved. But to some degree, you know, growing up in that environment taught me that if somebody wasn't jealous of my presence, then they must not love me as much. So, and now that I'm 49, I've learned some ways to neutralize my tendency to be very jealous, and it takes a pause and a little bit of reconnection with my higher power and reminding myself who I am. And also, it's also given that experience growing up in my family. It's also given me space to be able to hold for other folks who are exhibiting jealousy towards, for example, whether it is jealousy towards me or jealousy towards somebody who's talking to me. So I'm now able to be in that situation without the situation escalating. Unlike when I was growing up, every time my mom was jealous or my dad was jealous, it was always escalated and violent almost. So I think in terms of my codependency, that must be, and I'm just realizing this now, that must be one of the character defects that I had and didn't even know. And, you know, throughout time, and I grew up with Melody Beatty, you know, that book, Codependent No More. And because my brother mentioned I was a codependent, although in the Philippines, there was no treatment or anything like that. So I'm very happy to be part of CoDA. I was introduced to the 12 steps through Alcoholics Anonymous because alcohol was how I coped with my codependency. But I'm very happy to be here, and thanks for letting me share. And, you know, the lead's presentation really spoke to me. And thank you for reminding me that it isn't my fault and it isn't my problem to fix. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing, CC. And Brady, I see your hand up. Welcome.
Hi, my name is Brady. I'm codependent. And what struck me was my issues of being a middle child. And I did not get the resources out of my parents my older sister, younger brother got. And so I was kind of forced to become invisible. And I grew up not feeling I deserved anything. And when I was 4 years old, I came to Codependence Anonymous through another 12-step program. And the only literature we had back then was Pia Melody's book, Codependent No More. And in the back of the book, it had these checklists on self-care. And I said, Shazam, do I have proper housing? Do I have proper food? Do I have proper transportation? And, you know, because I bought my clothes at the Goodwill. I drove junky cars, and not because I couldn't afford anything better, but I could not bring myself to buy good things for me. And because I just felt I just didn't deserve it, you know. And so anyway, it went through a whole these checklists, right? And I learned quite a bit. And then after a couple of years, I strayed away from the program, and I came back a couple of years ago. And so I'm still working on my self-esteem issues. And so anyway, I want to thank you for having this this seminar, and I looking forward to learning a lot. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing. Brady? Anybody else with any questions, comments, or shares on today's topic, jealousy and boundaries? Also, well, I'll just open the floor up for questions and comments and shares on that topic, on those topics. Johnny, I see your hand up. Welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm Johnny. I really appreciate it. Codependent in Texas. I'm really glad that the subject of jealousy came up. I know I can't say I don't have a jealous bone in my body, but I think what I'm jealous of I'll give an example from my stepsister, just character traits, like she seems so strong on the outside and I seem so weak. But I think I always countered it with, but I know how tight her shoulders are, and it might look like she's got it all going on and she's so put together, and I'm not. But I know I know a deeper truth that goes with it. And the way jealousy comes up with another sister is she unfortunately has a daughter who's narcissistic and mentally ill on some level. So she's cut off by a number of her children. So anytime I share in a text that I get together with one of my grandkids, she will often say to me, "I'm so jealous." And from a codependent standpoint, it's a little challenging to deal with that because I accept that she's jealous, but I do like what was said. It's not my fault. I can't fix it. And I accept that it's hard for her, but that doesn't mean that I have to hide what I'm doing in my life so she'll feel better. And that's what the program brings to me, and I really appreciate a chance to share. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing, Johnny. Does anyone want to talk about how jealousy interferes with my recovery? Not unlike not setting healthy boundaries. Oh, and while we're on the subject of boundaries, I don't know. Yes, Terry, I see your hand. Welcome. And just give me a minute to wrap up this thought. There is a brochure that is free, a trifold brochure or fourfold brochure. I'll put a link to that brochure in the chat. And after your share, go right ahead. Terry, please, welcome.
Hi, this is Terry. I'm a recovering codependent. Can I be heard?
I can hear you, Terry.
Okay, great, wonderful, thanks. I was looking forward to this topic because I experienced jealousy in my relationships and really gained clarity on when that was coming up in the past year of my recovery, as different layers of old tapes and confusion got replaced by awareness through working the 12 steps and the traditions with my sponsor. And grateful for what was shared so far. And it got me thinking that for me, I was always really jealous of my sister's strong character traits. She did not have codependency like I did. She had self-worth and self-esteem. And that led me, a feeling of jealousy as a codependent, in my version of codependence, led me to enmesh with her and try to always get on her good side, care what she thought of me, my low self-esteem coming in, hinging on her approval, and I would change the way I behaved so that I would be in her in crowd. And that was driven not by love or wanting to be really close with her, but jealousy and envy of her sense of self. And I thought I could get a sense of self myself through being around other people who had it. And that never happened for me. Instead, I got confused again about who I was and still couldn't find my own self by myself, of myself, because I would take on other people's. I would do this when I was dating too. I would take on all my boyfriend's interests, and I would never suggest something to do or bring forth my opinion or what I wanted to do. I would just enmesh and come from that sense of low self-esteem, no self-worth that is so strong in my codependence when that comes through. So for me, boundaries has been crucial, and I've been experimenting with those from day one, because my meeting reads the boundaries. My weekly meeting that I started at reads the boundaries pamphlet every so often all together as a group. And that got me thinking what a boundary is and how I go about setting it. For me, the first thing I had to do was really feel my feelings, how I feel when I'm around people, and realize that it's not caused by them, it's caused inside myself by my past and what's going on for me, and maybe my desires and wishes. But it's so tricky to not fall into fantasy. If I'm visualizing the future, it's wonderful. If I'm in a fantasy where I can just put up a boundary and everything will be perfect, then it's a little bit of a harsh reality follow, because I kept doing that. I kept, saying my truth or setting a boundary in, a way that is safe for me and respectful of others. And I would come back and it would not always work, or I'd have this feelings backlash of like, oh, that wasn't good, I'm not safe. Oh, what's gonna happen now? But I just kept going, and it really leaned on the support of my CoDA friends and my sponsor. And it has resulted in that sense of, I do now know the different parts of me and my inner child, and I love her. So I want to protect her, and I want to make her life wonderful, and protect her, and not have all those codependent characteristics come in and protect her, but instead assertively protect her with things like boundaries, and feeling my feelings. So yeah, really thinking about this, then I don't have to get into all that jealousy stuff, because I can stand in my own strength and power, and be connected with a higher power rather than make others my higher power, which is always what I'm doing when I'm jealous and sitting in that. So grateful for this fellowship forum, and with that I pass.
Thanks for sharing, Terry. And thanks for mentioning the boundaries brochure. The copies of that brochure are for sale for, I think, 30 or 35 cents a piece at corepublications.org. But you can also go to the CoDA website, coda.org, and download a free copy of this brochure. I'll just put it on the screen briefly so you can see it. It's a nice little handy brochure to have and read. So this is what it looks like. If you go to the coda.org website, you can print it right from there. It's a PDF. And it's also available for sale in a pre-printed on some colored paper if you want the fancy version. One of the things the form provides is a place for us to ask questions that we might not get a chance to ask in a regular CoDA meeting. Hi, Brady. I see your hand up again. Yes. Before you share a second time, unless that's do we have two Bradys in the room? Help me. I don't think so. Before you share a second time, Brady, let me just check and see if there is anyone who hasn't shared yet and would like a share or has a question or comment. And nobody is raising their hand. So welcome, Brady.
Okay, I'm Brady from Codependent, and more about my family of origin. My My first wife said my brother mentioned to her in private that he realized why I did not want to have anything to do with him because of how much my mother favored him when we were growing up. So he said, he appreciated my feelings for not wanting to have anything to do with him. And I remember telling my therapist, I started going to therapy. And then when I came back to CoDA a couple of years ago, I remember telling my therapist about my family origin. I said, my older sister got braces, my younger brother got contact lenses, and I got told to get a paper route when I wanted something. And that's the way it was. And I mentioned to my sister that, that my brother always had new shoes. And every time my shoes started wearing out, my mother said, well, just get a piece of cardboard and put it in the bottom, and until we can get around to getting you some new shoes. And my sister was in that. She said, no, that probably didn't happen. I go, it probably didn't happen. So my relationship with my siblings is not real good. And I think it led to my feeling less than, and I limit my relations with my siblings as much as possible. And I'm still trying to connect boundaries to jealousy. And probably by the end of the meeting, I'll get there. Anyway, thank you for letting me talk again.
Well, thank you for sharing. Hi, Emily. I see your hand up. Welcome.
Hi, thanks so much for the meeting. Thanks everybody for your shares and for the vulnerability and just sharing around jealousy. I don't know if I said I'm Emily, I'm codependent. Maybe I didn't, but I'm Emily, I'm codependent. And I have been very jealous for most of my life, and extremely so. There's no getting around that. And it's been in my romantic relationships, it's been in my family. I am a middle child. And the person who I've always, from my earliest memories, had a lot of jealousy toward was my little sister. And I've had an intense shame about my jealousy because I don't want to be jealous. I don't like that I struggle with these things. I want it to go away. I don't want to struggle the way that I do, but that hasn't gotten me very far in changing it so far. And I've seen that show up in romantic relationships with, other women and things like that, but also even more recently. And my partner is very close with his family, and I'll feel jealous of like the relationship he has with his mother or with his sisters and anyway, so I've been working a lot. I'm on step 4 right now. It's my couple times around working the steps, but my sponsor is helping me look at this in terms of what she calls self-centered fear. And it's this belief that like this self-centered fear of kind of this feeling of like, where's mine? I'm not going to get it. If they have it, I'm not going to get it. And she talks to me like the difference between envy and jealousy being like, jealousy being that someone else has something that I want and they can't have it, but envy being like someone else has something that I want, but it's okay if they have it too. And I think I mostly experienced jealousy. And I really like someone shared something about higher power, and the more that I'm in the program and surrendering over these feelings like I can't fix this myself. This is a character defect that has ruined relationships. It's caused so many fights. It's caused me to distance myself from my family members. And there was and has been differential treatment among me and my siblings. I'm the middle of 3 girls, and we're all 1 year apart. And so we were constantly compared to each other. And my little sister was the beautiful, like golden child. And I was like kind of the black sheep of the family and rebelled a lot. And I still carry resentments about that, but I'm starting to see that like I have the responsibility for looking at my part in those resentments, and I can't just like blame my family anymore for the fact that I still carry around all this jealousy toward everyone that I meet. But with the program, I'm becoming so much more aware of when I feel jealous and how it is so related to my low self-worth and this self-centered fear of like, where's mine? There's not enough. And so my sponsor's been helping me work with like affirmations from my inner child, saying like, there's enough love for me. I am enough. Like my higher power loves me unconditionally. I am lovable. And so now my impulse when I feel jealous isn't to control anyone and isn't to control the jealousy even or try to suppress it, because that's what I used to do in the past and it would just come out in some other way. But now I like look at it as something between me and my higher power that I have to heal with my higher power's help, and I have to be willing to like let my higher power in to ask for help to heal the jealousy and like find things about myself that I love and celebrate about me and who I am. I guess I also had an experience recently where my partner felt jealous about something that I was doing, and I was able to hold space for them while they felt jealous, and also explained kindly like that I was going to continue doing the thing because it made me happy and I didn't need to stop, and it was okay. And it was like, I guess that's where the boundaries part comes in, is like, for me, because I've been so jealous and struggled with that, like it's been a really big problem for me in my life, that I'm kind of creating a boundary now for myself that I don't get to blame anybody else for my jealousy now. Like I can find that love with my higher power, and fellows and other people who understand. I'm so grateful to have been here today and just heard other people, because I had so much shame about my jealousy for so long. I'm finding it really healing to hear other people sharing openly about their experiences with jealousy, and also just finding the safety to be able to share about my experience with jealousy. And yeah, I'm getting free of it little by little. I think I'm seeing progress. And those affirmations are really helping me, and I say those on a really regular basis. So thanks everybody for your shares. I'm going to leave it there. Thanks.
Thank you for sharing, Emily. Stephanie, I do see your hand up. Before you share a second time, let me see if there's someone who hasn't shared yet who would like, has a question or comment or would like to share. So hold that thought for a moment.
Carol.
Stephanie?
Hi, David. Yes, Carol here. I'd like to share a few thoughts, please.
Welcome, Carol.
Thank you. Let me just set my timer here because I'll lose track and I'll ramble on, and it's up to me to control my time. So with that, I've started my timer. Is it about 3 minutes we're trying to work within?
Yes, it is.
Okay, thank you.
Asking.
Thanks, David. Yeah, some of the thoughts that I have is that if and when I'm feeling jealous about someone or situation and stuff, I recognize it and I tell myself, okay, what is it that I want and need? Rather than demoralize myself, shame myself, blame myself. I've never liked the term character defects because I don't believe that having feelings is a defect. Having needs is not a defect. Having wants and desires is in no way a defect. But that it's my responsibility to be able to identify what's my feeling telling me. It's probably telling me I want or need something, or I'm yearning for something, and to not shame myself or anybody else for that matter when so-called defects of character come up. And once again, I hate that phrase. I hope that it someday gets changed in the literature because it's so outdated, given what we know today about trauma, about emotions, about needs, about nonviolent communication, and all that stuff that to me is much more positive, much more encouraging and supportive. And that's the angle I try to take, because I don't think it's a matter of trying to fix anything. It's less about fixing and more about finding healthy ways to cope. And that's where boundaries come in. So I'm gradually, I think, getting better at taking back my agency that I felt I lost in my childhood or in my family of origin. I felt that my agency was lost because of the enmeshment between my mother and a sibling of mine, and that still continues to this day. But now I'm getting better at speaking up for what I want and need, and staying in my own lane. Because what goes on between their relationship, you know what? Unless it affects me directly, I got to keep my mouth shut. And if something affects me directly, that is my opportunity to say, no, that's not acceptable to me. Or what I want is, can we have a discussion about, and that's using my voice more effectively. Because one of the quotes that I really like is, when I change the way I look at things, the things I look at change. So I'm finding that underlying jealousy or all these feelings is usually a deep yearning, a need or a want. And then coming back to feelings, I liken them to a beach ball that can't be forced underwater, because they're going to keep popping back up. And so what I need to do with my feelings is not suppress them, ignore them, or deny them, but rather pause, stop what I'm doing, recognize when it happens, and in fact, give myself a minor therapy session and ask myself, what is it that I want and need? Is it something that I can get met now, today, tomorrow, next week? And then work towards that. And to me, that's positive self-support and self-care and self-compassion. And that is so important for me in my own well-being and my mental health care. And I'm now at the 3 minutes, so I'll pass. And thanks all for listening.
Thanks for sharing, Carol. And Stephanie, I'm not ignoring you. I just see there are two people who haven't shared yet who have their hands up. And if there is time, I will get back to you. Linda, and if there is time, followed by Zoe and Donna B. Welcome, Linda.
Welcome. Thank you. I am Linda. I'm codependent. I'm recovering codependent. Thank you for this topic. I am a jealous person. I've been jealous all my life, and I've coped by producing, overproducing, perfecting, working harder, working more. And I think when I fall into that jealousy spiral, because it feels like a spiral sucking me down, I do recognize that I'm hungry. I'm hungry for something. I'm hungry for attention. I'm hungry for approval and affirmation. And that's when I really need to go to my higher power. I use slogans a lot. I use the affirmations booklet that CoDA produces, and I just read it sometimes front to back. I am loved. I'm lovable. I'm a loving person. I know new ways to live. Today I choose happiness. I am enough. And those affirmations, in addition to conscious contact with my higher power on a daily basis in the morning, first thing, is what I need to really address my love hunger and my jealousies that come out in a really destructive way at times. And that's it. Thank you for letting me share.
Thank you for sharing, Linda, and thank you for mentioning CoDA literature. Zoe, welcome.
Thank you. I'm Zoe. I'm codependent. I'm over in Scotland. It's really a pleasure to be here. It's the evening here. I kind of want to ask a question, just open to the group. I don't know how it works, but I'm interested in boundaries and trying to set them with myself, with people that aren't necessarily actually all that up for engaging. For a little bit of background, I'm just approaching a point now where I need to set some boundaries with my family, but I'm a bit lost with it, and I feel already quite cast out of my family. Not every single person, but yeah, I'm trying. It's getting to my mental health to such a degree that I'm understanding that something in it all is about the boundaries I have yet to set, the way that people have behaved, and now the way that I'm behaving, even though they're not around. So I'm really learning about boundary setting within my own mind, about how I can't let this sort of mental anguish in every single time I'm called to remember things that are going on in my life. I'm not sure if this is coming out very clearly at all, but yeah, I'm looking at boundary setting at the moment and where it originates and how to implement it. And I probably have more questions than anything else, than any experience to share. But I did realize that I've really been compromising my own boundaries with myself, and I'm at a point where these people can harm me literally just by appearing in my brain. So I'm thankful to CoDA for the support and the framework to get through that. even just to face it, to learn where my challenges are, where my behaviors are really impacting that and causing these effects as well. And just really appreciate these safe spaces to learn so much from everyone. So I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thanks for your share, Zoe. Your question makes me think of two of the promises, Promise 7 and 8. Promise 7, I am capable of developing and maintaining healthy and loving relationships. The need to control and manipulate others will disappear as I learn to trust those who are trustworthy. And Promise 8, I learn that it is possible to mend, to become more loving, intimate, and supportive. I have the choice of communicating with my family in a way which is safe for me and respectful of them. And if you stay on after we close the meeting, there'll be time for some more questions and comments. So maybe we could dig into that a little bit more. Adana, I see your hand up. Welcome.
Hi, David. I'm codependent. My name's Donna B. And thank you, David, for leading the group. And James, thank you for your lead and for everyone who's shared so far. And I've been on both sides of this jealousy thing, and it's a pretty icky feeling. And I had a grandmother once who taught me, we talked about it. She taught in the viewpoint of the 7 deadly sins. Jealousy is a perfect natural feeling. And it's when you go overboard with it that it can really make you ill. Just like she taught me self-pity, a little self-pity was good for me, but too much of it, and I'm going to get really sick. And so when I look at it from that aspect, it's easier to deal with on either side of the field you're on, either side of the fence, receiving end of it or feeling it yourself. And I grew up with a lot of siblings, and I would have one sister, if I had something good happen, would be really happy for me. And another sister would go in competition and become really hateful, almost to the point where it was later on in years, it was dangerous to be around her. And it always broke my heart because I never understood. For a long time, I went a lifetime trying to show her that she was loved and just as wonderful as everybody else in the world. And then when I got older, this crossed over into even my professional life. Last week, I received an acknowledgement, a very nice acknowledgement for the director of a program. And I went into fear over it. And I went into like, oh, please don't say this. And I was in fear of my boss being jealous or feeling less than. But I had to fight that feeling within myself and just let that happen and just learn to say thank you. It was a very nice acknowledgement, something I wasn't looking for, and I recognized that this is a feeling from my past that was going on, having that fear. And I've also been in relationship currently where I have been jealous, and it just totally took me by surprise. I'm like, I'm not a jealous person. What's going on here? And I think that when I looked at it and was able to talk about it, I was taking somebody else's behavior really personal and really, really personal. And when I finally was able to talk about it openly and work on it openly, it was able to dissipate and like not so much a worry anymore, but I really had to understand it myself. And the feeling of threats or something not being real, if it was in some other area. But the competition from other people has really what's harmed me the most. And even having a very close friend, I kept a really strict food program because it affects my inflammation and how much pain I feel. And she used to bring me over brownies and potato casseroles or something, trying to get me to eat it when she knew I was on the food program. And I knew that this was more about her and her dealing with her own food problems, but it was just a lot of areas to look at and a lot of areas to grow. And it's a great topic. Thank you.
Thank you for your share, Donna. Donna B. Thank you so much. We have come to the end of the sharing portion of this meeting, but I will keep the room open, and there will be time for more shares, questions, and comments. You will be heard. The next fellowship forum will be on May 28th, Saturday, May 28th, same time, Pacific, Arizona, Central, Mountain, Central, and Eastern times are, let's see, we begin at 12 noon Pacific time and Arizona time, 1 p.m. Mountain time, 2 p.m. Central, and 3 p.m. Eastern time. The topic next week, I'm going to change the schedule. Based on what I'm hearing, I think it's time for us to have a fellowship forum on the topic of the labels in this program about calling codependency a disease. And I think there was another word I heard, if somebody wants to help remind me, that
Character defects?
Defects, character defects. Yes, there is some archaic language in our documents. I think the fellowship forum is an excellent place for us to take up the topic of calling codependency character defects and a disease. And so next month, we will talk about character defects and the labels of defects and of codependency labels as defect and disease. And the month after that, the topic will be unity. I hear a lot of mentions of material that is not CoDA approved and CoDA produced. And I'd like us to have a dialogue and in the forum about CoDA unity and why it's important. So May, we will talk about the label of a CoDA label of the labels of calling codependency in CoDA a disease and character defect. And then the month after that, in June on the 25th, the topic will be unity. And so I thank everyone for being here today. Let me get back to the script so I say it right. And there is a link to the tickler in the chat if you want to be reminded about the fellowship forum. We get together on the last Saturday of every month. And I thank everyone for being here and your shares. And if you didn't get a chance to share, or if you have some more questions, please stay on the line and we will keep going after I close the meeting. And I'll share the closing prayer on the screen so that we can close the meeting. We thank our higher power for all that we have received from this meeting. As we close, may we take with us the wisdom, love, acceptance, and hope of recovery. And I think, yes, I need to remember to stop the recording. But it's not coming up. No, that's because that helps.